Hey, we just want to welcome everybody back this month for a three-generational perspective. And I have with me some wonderful ladies who's going to help me with this discussion. We have Samir Crooms. How are you today?
I'm
We have
good.
Janine Davis. How are you
Hello,
today?
everyone. I'm doing great. Thank you.
And we have Ambria Peters. How are you today? And we
Doing
have
good.
Brianna Adams. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
So I pray everybody's having a great year this year so far, and that things are all
Yes.
going the way that God has intended. Because sometimes it's not the way that we intend, but it is the way that God intends. And so we're going to start out today with our devotional. It's called The Lad. And The Lad comes from my biblical devotional book called Blinded by Sight, The Heart Matters. And The Lad can be taken from, it's actually in three books in the Bible. And I, it's in the John 6, 1 through 15, Matthews 14, 13 through 21 verses, and Mark 6, verses 30 through 44, and Luke 9, verses 10 through 17. And The Lad is about a young boy who actually had a chance to meet Jesus, and he witnessed a miracle. And I just want to start the discussion out with, do you remember when you first met Jesus? I'll start. So I was drawn to him around the age of 12, 13. I don't know the exact date. I know it was in a Sunday morning service, and I walked down the aisle to give my life to Christ. And my little brother actually followed me down the aisle. He had no clue what he was doing, but so we both ended up giving our life to Christ that day, and that was my interesting journey. Now, my relationship with Christ didn't develop until later on in life. Now, I was probably 15 years ago when I actually moved here to Florida and joined the church that I'm currently at now. And so this time around, I actually really know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and I have a much clearer understanding of, what I'm called to do.
I met Jesus. I guess I got baptized. It was between the ages of 16 and 17. I got baptized. I just knew, growing up, I just knew that going to church was the right thing to do or a right thing to do. I wasn't forced or anything, not really, but just following my grandparents and my mom. And I got baptized because I was like, why not? Jesus, he was drawing me closer to him, so I just decided to go ahead with it. They did like an altar call, and then they were announcing dates of when they were going to be doing baptism. So I just said, okay, I'll do it. I did it, and then, like you said, you didn't really develop your relationship until after, once you actually got a clear picture of what it meant to follow Jesus. So I'll say I started to get a bit more serious around like 18, 19. That's when life started to hit a little bit different. And reality started to kick in. But I did accept him, and during those like the beginning stages, it was just Jesus showing me his love through the Gospels because I was reading a lot of the Gospels then. So it was definitely something that was cultivated.
All right.
I so mine is a little different. My sister and I were I probably was maybe 20 or 21, and my sister was 19, and she was in college, and she was trying to go to college, and she was also trying to take care of her oldest daughter at the time. And she was like, the weight of everything is just too heavy. She didn't use those words exactly, but that's what she was explaining then. And she was like, she was trying to explain that she was feeling hopeless, and she was just like, we need to find a church and go to it. And so we ended up visiting a church, and it really felt like home, and it felt like we were there with family. And the pastor there opened the doors for salvation, and the way he described it, it was like we just knew that it was something that was for us, and that we were being called that day. And that's how it was for us. Yeah, that's how it went.
For me, I've always been in church, grown up in church my whole life. And as far as I can remember, I've loved going to church and hearing the word. I was never a child who played during service. I always was very in tune to everything that was going on. And I can remember when I was 11, growing up in a Baptist church, if the family joins the church, then you automatically are initiated for baptism and you're saved. That's the way, I kind of grew up thinking that it worked. And so I remember saying, I'm going to go next week. I'm going to go next week because I didn't want to get baptized. And so, but I actually gave my life and I met Jesus when I was 17. And it was after a day of me being a teenager, doing things I shouldn't be doing. The next day I woke up, I was walking home from a friend's house. And on the way from my friend's house was a tent revival in the neighborhood. And I decided to stop by this tent revival. And there was a missionary there who was sharing their story about how God told him to sell everything that he had and to move out of the country. And it was something about that story and the impact that he made by just having that obedience to God. That's the day that I gave my life to Christ. And that was when I was 17.
Mm.
Mine was, well, I already started growing up in church. I was raised in the church, so all I knew was church. So I kind of just followed suit with what I saw. You know, as a child, you like see and you do what you see. So I just followed suit, and I've never been introduced to anything else. I didn't know anything else, so it was kind of like, I guess Jesus is the way. Jesus is the only way. When I started taking it seriously, I didn't start taking it seriously until after I graduated from high school. And that's when I was like, okay, well, let's, start actually having a conversation. Let's start getting to know him. And that's when I started, hearing from God, giving me directions. And I noticed that it made my life so much easier when just talking to him instead of trying to fix it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That is interesting because everybody has a unique journey with him, the way that he draws you, the way that he calls you, the way that he finally gets you to come in and do the things that he wants you to do and not what you want to do. And so one of the things I loved about the lad is, they were out. Jesus had decided he was going to take the disciples away from everybody else. And so they were out getting away and they were in the desert. And then you have, it was supposed to have been a private trip between him and disciples. But obviously, you know what? Somebody always opening their mouth because all these people ended up in the desert with them, right? And when they came out, the disciples like looking at them like, okay, what are we going to do with these people that are out here with us? And so everybody's out there and Jesus like, just, you know what? Everybody sit down, and we're going to teach and we're going to feed them and we're going to do, well, first he wasn't going to feed them. He told them he was going to teach. And so he set everybody down to teach them, right? And then as time was going and it was getting late in the day, they realized nobody brought any food with them. So the disciples was telling them, you know what, send them away so they can go get food. And Jesus was like, no, you feed them. And they looking at each other like we look at each other. Me? You want me to feed all these people? Because they said it was like 5,000 men, but they didn't include the women and the children. And so you got this big, huge, massive group of people out there in the desert. I can't imagine. I can't remember. They didn't have porta potties like we do. There was like no bathrooms around. There was nowhere. It's like, back then, I don't know if they wore deodorant or what they were doing, but they brought all the sick out there with them. They didn't have wheelchairs. Plus, you can't push wheelchairs in the sand. So I'm sure some of them was carrying people. Some of them probably had them on the pallets. They was getting people there any way that they could to spend time with Jesus because they had heard he was wonderful. He was a healer. He was fixing things. He was just doing all these miraculous things that they didn't know. And this little boy is out there with them. and they were like looking for food. And all he had was, I think it was 5 fish and 3 loaves of bread, right? I'm sitting there thinking, this is my crazy mind. It ain't no way in the world I'm giving y'all my food. I'm not gonna have nothing to eat, and y'all gonna have something to eat. I'm gonna keep this food for myself, right? But thank God he didn't think like I did. He gave it to the disciples, and the disciples gave it to Jesus, and the food was multiplied, right? So, starting with this little bit of food, Jesus was able to feed all these people. So that leads up to my next question: was what little have you given that you have saw God multiply?
So um, for me, I think that it was starting out like helping marriages. It started out with one couple doing premarital counseling, and then a few more. Just like a almost like a like check-ins, and just making sure that everything is okay, and like working through certain challenges and things like that. And how it started with just one, and now it's like a big family of people. It amazes me when Bishop Jones appointed us as marriage ministry leaders 15 years ago. We just didn't realize that it was going to morph into something so big, and how um, it, it started out very little and become very, very big. And so I'm thankful for the additions to our family, but that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about taking something small and making it big.
And you,
In my life, it's been that.
if you think about it, in the Bible, he does that a lot. Like with Abraham and Sarah, they had nothing. They thought they were barren. They took what little they had, and he, multiplied them by having grandkids, great grandkids,
Right.
and they became a huge nation, right?
Yep.
And so he did it then. He did it another time. Even with the 12 disciples, you think about them. There was just 12 of them, right? And they were to go out and spread the word everywhere. And so he takes the little and he makes it into a lot. And so just a little, all you have to do is just give a little bit of yourself, and then he can multiply that. Anybody else want to share their story?
So sometimes I can't really think of, but I'll just say starting, I think it was like a year or two ago. I bought one of these like the devotional books, Jesus Always, and Jesus Calling, and I read it just trying to get closer, just trying to do something daily to refresh myself and my relationship with Him. And I just started sending them to a family group chat. And I'll send them like here and there, whatever, and then it started to turn into a daily thing. And they were appreciating it, and they liked it, and it allowed us to have conversations about Jesus. It opened up a new window for us to talk about something different than what we usually talk about. It drew up more conversation and more honesty, and it drew us closer together as a family. And then it led to me sending those devotions to friends and to coworkers and to some of my classmates. So it's just kind of like something that I do. I just feel like everybody needs some type of encouragement. You never really know what everybody is going through. So I just make that kind of like my icebreaker kind of thing whenever I meet somebody new, or just a regular conversation. I just kind of say, hey, I hope your day is going well, followed with a picture of the devotion. And I've seen so many changes in my friends. Our conversation always leads up to something, relating to God and family as well. I've seen my aunt, I've seen her now start to send devotions. She asks me, what book you're reading now. She goes out and buy them. And now she's just been telling me how before she takes my little cousins, her kids to school, they pray together now. So, you just really never know. I remember telling God, I don't want to do it anymore because I feel like it's becoming a duty. And I was just like, dang, because some days I miss the devotion because I'm just so busy thinking about work, school, other stuff that I have to do. And I'm like, oh, I gotta send this devotion to them. But I think God was just like, but you don't know like what you're doing. Like, so just keep doing it. Don't think of it as a duty and just let me do the work. So that's something that I've been doing and something that I've just been seeing that God has turned into a huge, huge thing. So
I think for me, it's similar. It's kind of sort of relating to relationships. So for me, it would be kindness and understanding. I think that's something that kind of has always come naturally to me. So I just try to sow kindness and sow understanding. And as a former, I would say former introvert, I've always wanted to have friends, but I never really had the confidence or the wherewithal to make friends. And over the years, God has allowed me to just use what I have, which is that kindness and understanding. So wherever I go, I try to sow that. And it has yielded me great fruit. I have lots of great friends and people in my circle that encourage me, as well as I encourage them. And wherever I go, I just try to sow that. It's not always received well, but it's something that has become, a part of the fabric of who I am. So kindness and understanding has yielded great fruit for me.
For me, it was tithe and offering. Um, for me, I do the tithe and offering, and I would see it in my life, the different how he would, give it back to me, and um, double time, or it doesn't even have to be in money. It could just somebody giving me something that I've needed. I've noticed that I've never gone without. So he has been a really good provider for me ever since I've learned about the importance of tithe and offering. Is not just giving money to the pastor. You really see the fruit in it in your life. So
Yeah, that's true. I can remember one time when when Bishop asked us to, he said, whatever the Lord is putting on your heart to give, right? And I had got this check. I had got this check, and I swear I heard the Lord say to me, give the check. And I was like, I just got the check. And I'm gonna tell you what, I think I was like in the second row, because we used to always sit on the second row, right? I left the second row and went all the way back to the vestibule, because I was just like, there's no way the Lord is telling me to give him this check. It wasn't no small check. And I was just like, really, Lord? And I was in the vestibule and I just broke down and I cried, because I was just like, really? And I finally walked up there and I gave it, I put it on the altar, and I was like, Pastor was sitting up there, and I was like, please just tell him to leave me alone. And he started laughing. You know how he's always laughing. He started laughing, and he was like, it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. And that, I mean, a lot of times when God calls you, the little things he calls you, and then he starts to stretch you, and it can become very uncomfortable. But when it becomes uncomfortable and you grow into it, then you think you're okay, I'm fine here, I'm good, I've grown, I did this, I did that. And then the next thing you know, he's stretching you again. And so it's very interesting that we've been receiving that word about putting new wine into new wineskin and not putting the new wine into an old wineskin. So we have to allow God to keep renewing us so that we could have the capacity to hold whatever it is that he's giving us to do at that time. And just with just coming out of a 2-week summit and interviewing people and talking to people and running it every night, that was a stretch. I'm telling you, it was a good stretch, and it turned out really nice, but that was a stretch. That's not something I ever thought about doing, ever wanted to do, ever even imagined I would do. But it went from 2 devotionals to, doing the blogs, doing the summit. And it just it's amazing, and it keeps growing. And God can take that little in your life, that little desire, because I did have a desire to please him and want to be with him and to do the things that he wanted me to do. But he took that little bit and he has blown on it tremendously. So have you guys found yourself in an uncomfortable position where you know that God is stretching you or he wants you to do something that you're not quite sure you're able to do, but you're going to do it anyway because God told you to do it?
That's
I'm
everything.
like,
Yeah.
Lisa, I have a question for you. It kind of stems from what you just said. Were you always a giver? That's the first question. And two, are you in a place now to where if you can hear him tell you to give everything that's in your account, where it wouldn't be a struggle for you at this point now? I've known you a long time and I've seen you like have to give up a lot. Because you knew that you knew that you knew that you knew that he was asking you to give something, and you've always been pretty obedient with it. And is it easier now?
No, it's not.
No.
I do it out of obedience. And I know he always tells us we need to be a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
And so, he's still working on me in that area, but I don't mind giving,
Yeah.
It was just a large amount. And I can be, if he told me, I interviewed a lady last week, right?
Yeah.
And she had a 6-figure business, right?
Mhm.
And God told her to shut it down. And she did it. And I was like, I don't know. Lord, I don't know if I could shut down, my 6-figure business. And then I was thinking about it. I said, but you know what? If he allowed her to do it once, she can do it again. And so, you know what? Maybe it wouldn't be so hard for me to shut it down because I know if that's what he intended me to have, it will come back better and stronger. And so thinking like that, because you have to have to transform your mind in the way that you think and the way that you see things. And so, yeah, you know what? I probably would give. It probably would be an initial struggle until I thought about it for a moment. And then I probably would eventually just say, okay, Lord, you know what? I know you have this for me and I can do this. And
Right.
whatever it is, you're going to have something better.
Yeah. I used to have a lot of fear with that. Like I used to, Bishop Jones would stretch you in a late night service, calling out certain dollar amounts, the exact amount that's in your account. And
Yes.
I just remember having a lot of fear there. And so I was curious to know where you are with it now, because I know that you've been stretched in that area.
Yes, Lord. That was, yeah.
I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying about if you have a heart to please God.
Mhm.
I mean, you might struggle with some things that he's telling you to do, but eventually you'll do it.
That
Yeah.
is true.
And that's kind of how I am about, this place that I am in now. And I struggle with some things that the Lord is calling me to do or telling me to do because they're personal, and they require vulnerability. They require humility as well. And they require for me to be on display. And as I said earlier, I'm a former introvert, so I'm cool with being in the background. I'm cool with not being heard to a certain extent. But what he's calling me to do, what required me to do the exact opposite of that, to put myself on display, well, to allow him to put me on display. But I think what helps me to be obedient and to take small steps towards it is the fact that I know that I'm not going to be doing it alone. I'm not necessarily putting myself on display, but it's God working in me to put me on display and knowing that he'll protect me in it if it's what he's called me to do.
That's true. I think it goes to like being able to trust him with the things that you don't want to give up. I think it goes to the scripture of like his thoughts are not your thoughts and his ways are not your ways. I think that makes it a bit more easy to say, okay, God, I can give this to you, because like you say, transforming and renewing your mind, that's a part of it too. Like knowing that there's God's perspective and then that there's your perspective. And I grow comfortable with a lot of things. Like when God allows me to go into a position, sometimes I think, okay, this is it. I'm going to be here for a while. Like I'm going to do a lot here. You know, I just grow comfortable wherever I am, and sometimes it takes a lot for me to see that change has to come. And I'm not always good with change. Recently, and I know everybody's you're supposed to be happy and all this other stuff, but recently I got a new car and I miss my old car like a lot. It's a new car, like it has all of the little, what they call it, bells and whistles. It's really nice, but my Nissan, it was 2006. And I loved it. That was my first car. My dad gave me that car, and I've had it for 3 years. And I did the best I could to take care of it, but it was like a family car. My grandma had it, my aunt had it, and then my dad, and then me. So it was just like, it meant a lot to me. It was a lot of transparent moments. I cried in that car. I yelled in that car. Like I found out a lot of stuff in that car about myself. Like it was. Cried at the park in the car. Like it was a lot of stuff that I did. And that car was basically a part of my journey up to where I am now. And I've always said, like, "Ugh, God, I just need a new car." Like, but sometimes I just think I'm not ready for new things. And that also helps me. It helps me to know that God sees more in me, but it also just makes me grow uncomfortable because sometimes I don't believe that change is necessary. So, but this month, a lot of new things has been happening, and I just have to just learn how to accept it and to know that His ways are not my ways and His thoughts are not my thoughts. That reassurance just keeps me on track with the path that He wants me to go on.
I've learned recently, or just over the last few years, that to just do things afraid. Um, there's so many things that I do on a day-to-day basis that are so uncomfortable, but I notice that the more uncomfortable they are, and the more I do it, I end up in situations where it's requiring even where I'm even more afraid to do it. But it's another level. But I'm not as afraid as I was before. And so I think sometimes too we just overthink things. Like we just make something that we know He's holding our hand through. It's like we know that, but that because we're faced with something, the fear can be kind of paralyzing at times. But I found that over time, that as I do the things that make me afraid, so to speak, when I'm put in a situation where I have to do something that's even more difficult, it's not as hard as it was before. And so it's a trick. It's to try to stop you. Like, oh, I'm too afraid to do this, so I just want to stop right here. But I do it afraid. I'll do it afraid, and I'll hold His hand, and I'll be all right.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's kind of like that analogy of a roller coaster. You're excited to go on it. You think it's going to be exhilarating, but it frightens you too at the same time. When you're riding it, you're frightened all the way through it, but you loved it just enough to do it again or to try another one.
I think I can. Yeah.
I know one thing that Tamara said, and that's interesting because when I think about change and being older, a lot of older people don't want to make a change. They're pretty much set in their ways. But to hear a young person say, I don't want to go through change is different. I mean, I remember being your age and I was just like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to go here. I want to be here. I loved like the roller coaster rides. I loved like skydiving. I loved, snorkeling. I love all that crazy stuff. I'm telling you, the crazier it was, the more, I love like going fast on the motorcycles. Just, jet skiing, all that kind of stuff. I just wanted to do everything. Now, so I thought, young people, hey, I like change. I want to do something new. I want to experience life. I want to do all this travel, all the stuff that, that you want to do, I enjoyed that stuff when I was younger, and that takes a lot of change.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of, you wanting to be a part of just a bigger picture. And so when it comes to God, you know what? It's like that same desire. You know what? I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to, I remember one of the deacons said to me when we first got to RLCM, it's funny. He said, you got a lot of zeal with a lack of knowledge. And I didn't understand what he meant when he first said that. But then after being there for a while, yeah, I was like, right. Because I was on so many ministries and I was just like, I'm still married and I got a child and I got a house and, I work and then church. And it was just like, oh my God, this weight, after a while, it got to be a heavy weight. And I'm like, you know what? God does not require all that. He doesn't require you being there 24/7 in his house. But he does, you're supposed to give something back. Whether you're giving back, you're supposed to give back at home. You're supposed to give back with, your family, with your kids, and in the environment, even at your work environment, you still are supposed to represent him in your daily walk. So you need to be in the house to be fed, but you don't need to be in the house 24/7.
Right.
Right.
So that was interesting, but that was a stretch for me too, being at church, because I wasn't born and raised in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm glad
so,
you said that. It's well, I just want to add on because with me, I can be very cautious. Like how you said you used to like do all that stuff, and I dream about doing it, but just something in me don't want to, like, I can't really go to do it. So it's kind of like a blessing and a curse at the same time, because being cautious, it gives me time to think about a decision that I want to make, but then I also overthink a lot. So sometimes I'm just too cautious to the point where I don't do nothing. Like, if God, because I think 50% of the relationship with Jesus is taking a risk. And then 50% is just like, trusting him. That 50%, because you giving your life to him, that's a huge risk. Like, and our expectations are thrown away in the wind. And then now we're just out here like walking with Jesus, like, what's next? You know what I'm saying? He may tell me to give up the new car. I miss my Nissan, but not that much, like, you might tell me, you know what I'm saying? So I could just be too cautious. Sometimes I wish I was like my friends, or sometimes, just sporadically do things and just up and go. But I'm like, I got too much to lose and I can just hold on to a lot of things. But I think God wants me to be a bit more releasing and freeing, to know that wherever I go, he got me. And that's been hard, it's hard to be young and to be cautious.
Yeah. God has me on a journey in this season, and this hopefully helps others. To where my own wisdom is saying this is too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing things, but I've said this before. I don't hear God audibly. He always sends me very clear sign, and he's been showing me signs along the way in the craziest things that most people will just be like, don't do that. This is a bad move. Why would you do this? And he keeps showing me like, I'm here. Just go. I'm here. Just go. And so I'm like, all right, this sounds crazy. This doesn't make sense, but okay. And things that shouldn't work out actually work out because he's saying, go and do this. And so as I keep following the path, things just continue to unfold and they don't make sense. But I'm learning how to be comfortable in the things that just don't make sense. I just go with it. And in this season, he's showing me like stuff is going to look really, really crazy. But with me, it might, but it's all going to end up working out. And so just go with me and see what it morphs into. And it's been morphing into some very interesting things, but it's been I've been in some very scary places. But I've felt him with me like never before. Mm-hmm. And so while it seems like it's not it just go.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And I think somebody commented up here too that said, if we're obedient to God's word, the journey for us will be so much easier. Right. And and that's the truth. It would be so much easier if we were obedient, but obedience comes with letting go of a whole lot of us.
Right.
And when you letting go of you, it's not always easy, especially when you've been walking around with you for 60 something years.
Nope.
That reminds me of the children of Israel in the wilderness.
Mhm.
They were struggling to get to the destination because they were full of themselves. They were
Mhm.
full of their old way of doing things and full of their own thoughts about how this journey should look or how it should taste or how it should smell. And
Yeah.
because they were caught up on that, they didn't get that first generation of them, didn't get there. And so that's very true. If you're so full of yourself and how you think things should go, and we can be chronic overthinkers, if you're raised to be very independent and to take care of yourself and to go for things, reach your goals and things like that. If you're raised that way, or if that's a part of the fabric of who you are, you can carry that same thought process into your relationship with Christ. And when he tells you to do something, you can overthink that as well instead of trusting him through the process, just moving when he says move. And so I think for me, like a lot of times I struggle with the progress of obedience. It's because of that tendency to overthink and to try to anticipate what's going to happen next, or anticipate the stumbling blocks, or anticipate how I'm going to look, or what people are going to say, or just focusing on everything around the instruction rather than the instruction itself.
Mhm.
Right.
I
That's
just want
good.
to I just want to add on to one thing that Embria said. She said, you said that even though it looks like it's not what it is or what you pictured it, it's still, in the plan. And my car had broke down. But my Nissan that I love so much, it broke down, and I was stressed or whatever because I had to still go to school. So everything was just a bit, it was just tight. But like you said, things work out. So I went to Bible study, and my friend had went, and this was like the week of Christmas. So I didn't have a car at Christmas. I was like, you know what, God, the gift that keeps on giving. I ain't got no car. And I went to Bible study, and I did not want to go to the altar. He called, to pray and lay hands. I was like, God, I'm gonna sit right here because I'm just fed up, tired, like I got stuff to do. And I just wasn't planning on getting a new car. I was gonna hold off until I graduate.
Yeah.
But it was about time for it to go. And I remember my friend went, and she wanted to go. We went, and after service, she gave me a hug, and then I just cried while she was giving me a hug. And she knew what was going on. And only thing that she said, she just looked at me. She said, "I'm off tomorrow. You off tomorrow. Let's go to the dealership." I said, "Okay, we could just go." That same day, I got a car. Like I wasn't planning on doing that, and then I drove off in a car. And I cried, but it wasn't happy tears. They were sad because I was like, this wasn't the way. I didn't want it to go like this. I wanted to be prepared. Like I just thought that things would look different once I got a new car. Like I didn't want it to happen out of stuff just going on. And then I looked at my notes after, like a week after I got the new car, and November 24th, 2022, I had a dream that I was in a dealership and I was getting a new car. That was 2 years ago.
Mm.
And I sent her that, and I was like, girl, next time I'm just shut up. When something happens, I'm just hush and let it play out, because I wrote that down 2 years ago, not knowing what it was going to look like. Like I didn't know that that moment would come when my car is going to break down, and I was crying, I'm frustrated. And then it happened that same day, like, just like that. And it was meant to be. I mean, it's more detailed what I got in here, but
Well,
it's literally spot on.
I wanted to ask you, was one of your primary concerns the payment?
Yes,
Yeah,
my car,
that
it was a cash car, okay? And I had it for
right.
3 years.
And
I was
so
Yeah.
to
That
you and to others, it's like it's not wise. Like why would I get get a debt or another bill? But what's going to happen is you're going to see how it's going to all come together, and you'll be fine.
I
You know what I
literally,
mean? You had to be pushed.
yes, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I had the amount. I literally have the amount of the car, the pay here in the note that I wrote 2 years ago.
Right.
And I didn't, I'm still just like trusting him. I'm like, okay, God, hey, this was 2 years ago. This bank account must look like how these payments is coming, because I just, and then I just moved into an apartment. It's just like, hold up, like
he's like let me show you, let this is going to be one of your testimonies where you just felt like you couldn't do it, and he's going to show you like, yes, you can. I'm with you, and we're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
And it's going to be all right. It's happening right when it's supposed to, and he's going to show you that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, this stuff is scary. Like
No, it is.
Somebody told me this is the stuff that people don't tell you when you say, okay, Jesus. They just tell you, okay, like, hey, I need to know
This is your walk on the water. Come on out here with me with this payment.
Oh my God. And this water is cold, okay? But
Mine's is the exact opposite. I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I got the plan. You gave me the plan. This is what we're gonna do. I feel like God sometimes be frustrating me because maybe I don't let him finish his sentence. Because I'd be so excited. Because I don't like the whole like roller coaster thing, but I'm okay with change. I'm excited for change. So when I have this plan or this vision, or when he gives me this plan or this vision, like, okay, for an example, you're gonna get a new car. We're gonna get a new car. Okay, God, I'm gonna get a new car. So let me go to the parking to the lot and let me go find a new car, forcing myself to get a car. And I don't know, it's for some whatever reason it just don't work out. So now I'm frustrated because I ain't let the man finish his sentence and tell me the whole plan and situation when he's saying you're going to get the car to give it to somebody else that wasn't yours to keep in the first place. So that's where I'm at right now. So now I'm like, okay, God, like, I know I'm not supposed to stay here. I know I'm not supposed to be sharing my money with like at least a manager with them that's not doing nothing. I'm sitting here doing all the hard work and I'm passing them 30% of my income and they not doing nothing. They just sitting there on their computer. So I'm like, okay, I know you got, better for me. You told me you have better for me. Like, when is this going to shift? Like, I'm ready to shift. I'm getting impatient. I'm ready to move, making like impulsive decisions. And so I guess my stretch would be being patient and waiting on the timing, really waiting to get the whole scenario, the whole thing, so that I can, do whatever you tell me to do.
That is interesting. Yeah, I try not to ever pray for patience. God will put you in a position or put people around you that you're always going to be like, oh my God, what are you doing? But that's a good stretch. That is a very good stretch to learn how to wait on him. Wait for the Lord to say, move now. And we don't always hear that because a lot of times we get into our own flesh, our own desires and stuff like that. So I've learned to, when I get a word, I've learned to just kind of like sit back. We went to the altar not too long ago, and all I wanted was the Lord to tell me I was on the right track for the summer. Just a yes or no answer. That's all I needed. I got this long extended word all in the mic. So there ain't no way I can deny that I heard it because everybody heard it. And I'm just like, Lord, I didn't come up here for that. I'm just like, okay. So, but we're gonna wait for him to put it into place. Because I'm like, okay, we're gonna sit back and we're gonna wait and see. Okay, Lord, you open the door, you do what you say you're gonna do, and then we'll just see where it goes from there. So yes, I've learned to sit back and kind of wait for him to take the lead and not to take the lead myself.
Yeah.
And so that is good. That is really good.
I think most of us probably has a story like that, Brianna, where we got a little bit overzealous when we heard the word of the Lord and we just decided, oh, let me just go ahead and take action. And then we take action, and then maybe we hit a stumbling block, or we, find out that we moved a little bit too fast and we need to back it up.
Yep.
But I definitely have had those moments as well where I didn't let God finish his sentence. And those are always interesting, but that we learn from them, though. I think that's a part of the process of hearing God's voice and knowing that you've heard his voice, and being able to understand clearly what he's saying. So I think it's a part of the process.
Yeah. And then, Brie, I think it's also important that while we don't like praying for patience, but being patient, I think it's just really important, at least from my experience, to make sure you evaluate your heart posture. It, like, in between the time before you get to this arrival, because you just don't want to accept anything. I just struggle sometimes with being content, and when I can look back, I see that my heart posture for what it is that I was going to receive was all off. So when I received it, I was like, okay, I probably rejoiced over it for 2 seconds, and then after that I'm like, okay, what's next? So when you do arrive there, just make sure that your heart posture is open to God, and to continue to worship him, and just continue to have remembrance of him and what he did, even though the journey didn't look like what you wanted it to, but the journey is actually what makes us, so I just say always just evaluate your heart posture.
And that's a good thing, to evaluate your heart posture. That is, I'm sure when the lad walked away from the desert and all the people, that he knew what he had. He knew he only had those 5 fish and those, I think 2 loaves of bread. He knew what he had when he started, right? And then for him to witness such a wonderful miracle, it was a blessing. And just like today, you know what you started out with, and you know how much God has blessed you and increased what you had to offer. And it's such a wonderful miracle to know that, our Father is always with us. He's always there. Even when we stumble, he's still there, and he always loves us, and he's looking out for our best. And so as we get ready to close for tonight, I just want to say, always remember, even though it's hard sometimes, and, we don't always wait, you know what? He still loves us, and he's still there, and he's never going to leave us nor forsake us. And so that is the blessed part of walking with Jesus. So does anybody else have any last or few comments they would like to make?
Just trust God. That's all. That's all I can say. That's what I've got from this whole thing. I think everybody just need to know how to trust him.
Yeah.
And also that it's a journey to trust God. You won't get it on the first try. But I think that's what makes you much more appreciative of his kindness and his grace.
Yes.
And that the process is refining.
Yes.
It's preparing you for where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
God will never ask us to do anything that he won't protect us through.
That is true.
Amen.
That is true.
Yeah.
Well, Bree, you going to say something, or no, you done? I just want to say,
I was just going to say that was good. That was a good point.
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank you, ladies, for coming out and sharing. I want to thank everybody in the audience for coming to listen. Thank you for all the comments that have been coming across. We really do appreciate you guys coming out every month and supporting us and just listening to the conversation and contributing. We love it. And we can't wait to see you again next month with the next devotion out of my devotional, The Blinded by Sight, The Heart Matters. And so we will see everybody next month. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.